Hi, my name's Mark. I'm from MCRCWA. Tonight we're going to talk about lock wiring. It's one of the essential elements of safety for your race bike. It just assures that all the bolts that potentially could rattle loose and from a safety element can't do so by attaching one bolt to another fixed surface or potentially another bolt depending on what bolts you're doing. So we're talking about brake caliper bolts, radiator overflow, radiator drain bolts, oil drain bolts, the oil filter itself, oil filler, etc, etc, etc. So it's an essential element of what you need to be doing to have your bike prepped for racing. So tonight what we'll do is go through how to prep a bolt, just a single one. You can buy pre-built kits. ProBolt do an amazing stainless and titanium kit which are drilled essentially, ready to go. But if you're just getting into the sport and not throwing thousands of dollars at it, drilling your own bolts is a cheap and easy way to go about that. Right, so these are pretty much the tools you're going to need to lock wire or lock wire a bolt itself. So drill, hammer and punch, lock wire tool, and a load of these. This is a 2mm drill bit because they do break. You will go through quite a few of them, so buy 20. It just saves you the hassle of having to go back and buy more because when you're doing a whole bike's worth of lock wiring, you will start to break them. It does happen, so just be aware of that. So the first part of this process for lock wiring is just to use your punch and your hammer, because what you're going to be doing is just marking a spot on the bolt itself that will allow you to then put your drill bit on. If you don't have that, it will tend to slip when you're trying to drill, and it's not ideal. So you put it there, just a light tap, and that will give you, where is it? I don't know if the camera's showing that very well, but there's a small dot. There it is. There's a small dot ready for us to drill into. Alright, so my bolt's in my piece of wood. I've used a piece of wood just because when you're clamping it down to anything, you're not going to damage the threads using wood. This is all cut out because that's for my suspension rebuilds. This allows me to hold the suspension in place. First thing is just to get a bit of WD-40 on it, just on the end of that. To get it prepared. I'll put some on the actual drill bit in a second. The real trick is just to be slow and steady with this and try and keep it nice and firm. If your drill bit's flexing backward and forward, it will snap when they go in, so it's just keeping it upright throughout this whole process. So slow and steady is the trick. And we're through there. So that is a bolt pre-drilled, ready to go. I'll just pop it out, it's not hot. So if we can see that there, that's the initial drill hole through. So that goes just through to the other side and will allow us to put the lock wire into it. So now we've got the bolt drilled out, I'll show you how to use the lock wire. So we've got our lock wire here and lock wiring tool. What you do is just thread the lock wire through the hole in your bolt. So you got both ends, and then fold it in half. Lock wire pliers have a little clamp on them, so what I'll do is attach my lock wire pliers here, click that in place, which stops them from opening, and then you pull on this little swivel, and that just allows it to turn and creating a nice tight pattern on the bolt itself. Now, if you're really lazy like me and you don't want to be re-lock wiring your brake bolts and whatnot constantly, I have from GoMoto these nice little lock wire clips. So instead of actually having to lock wire every time I do the bike, I can actually just use a lock wire clip on there, and that will clip on and through, which is fantastic. And that way it's reusable. So you're not cutting up lock wire constantly, you're just using that one piece forever and ever. So once you've lock wired the bolt itself, it should be lock wired on the other end to something else. And in this situation I haven't, just to give an example. But the lock wire itself should be nice and clear, or sort of clean as such. So you don't want it looking too scrappy. It should be fairly taut. a nice clean pattern if you can as well. It just makes everything look like it's presented better, and in doing so your scrutineers won't pick on you as hard. Just as an example, here's the lock wiring on my front caliper bolts on the R6. So nicely taut, not super tight, but nicely taut. Lock wire clipped through each of the bolts, and that passes scrutineering every time. Thanks for watching tonight's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If there are any subjects that you think we should cover off, please do let us know via the Facebook page or admin@mcrcwa.com.au. We just want to take your suggestions and try and help improve, make this whole process for you to get into racing easier.